of you saw me do morphology yesterday? A lot of you, okay, that's fine. Those of you who didn't, you missed out. It was wonderful. No, I'm kidding. We're going to have a good morning, though. But I may make some vocabulary references, but I'll clarify them so that everybody knows what we're talking about. So I'm William. I go by William. The handout is not up. I'm not sure why. I did send it in late, but it was late like last Thursday. So there was a glitch. I think it will be up. The link isn't live. I did email them this morning when I woke up because I noticed it wasn't up. So relax. It'll be up there. If you have any problem with it, here's your safety valve, guys. This is my email address. Okay, it's wvancleave, you have to spell it right, at wvced.com, and that will get you to me. So if you have any questions, now don't email me right now because they're going to put it up, but tomorrow, if they haven't, email me and I'll help you out, okay? So tell you a little bit about me. I am from Louisville, Kentucky. At 18 years old, I went to the College of Worcester, an hour and a half from here. Lived there for 4 years. I did some work, actually, believe it or not. So enjoyed that experience. It was great. I don't miss your Februaries, I'll tell you right now. Louisville's Februaries are probably not a whole lot better, but they're a little bit better. And Worcester, those of you who haven't been there, it's a pretty flat campus. So the wind comes whistling through the quad, and I can still feel it, actually. Right now, I just shivered. So did that, and then I went to New York State for 15 years, and I worked at a school for dyslexic students. It's a boarding school. It's called the Kildonan School, and my mentor founded that school. Her name is Diana Hanbury King. And at that school, I did Orton-Gillingham tutoring for 15 years. I trained teachers in Orton-Gillingham. I do a little bit of that still today. I tutored, I taught literature, I taught Algebra 1 for a couple of years, I did middle school soccer coaching, dorm duty. This is a boarding school life. So I am not saying your lives are not tough. I'm saying boarding school teachers have this other piece that you perhaps don't know about, like chasing down kids who have sneaked out of a dorm at 2 in the morning on a Thursday, for example. Did that. Really enjoyed that experience, but it's also a drainer in a lot of ways. So I moved to Greenville, South Carolina, lived there for 12 years, started my consulting practice. I still tutor privately. I'm tutoring 3 8th graders via Skype right now, and I'm tutoring 2 seniors, but they're kind of on their way out. We're phasing out. So they contact me when they've got like a paper or a project or the college app or something like that. And I write books and I train teachers. So this is sort of day 26 in a long series of training days, but I'm excited to be here. And then today, unlike my typical life lately where I rush to the airport, I get to drive home. So I'm super excited. I am also super excited to note that it's been over 30 years ago I came up to college, and it's fascinated me that 71 is still under construction after all those years, and I'm pretty sure it's the same construction. Somebody told me that's unlikely, but I think there are still spots of construction. I don't know why they can't have 71. I think they ought to have a month every year where it's just sort of like, there is no construction this month, we can travel. So anyway, so that's me in a nutshell. Like I said, you can get the handout from me. My website is up here as well. It's wvced.com. Yes, there's an online store and various materials, but there are also free downloads, and I blog occasionally. There's some other things up there. My specialties are written expression, which we're going to do today, and vocabulary instruction, which I did with some of you yesterday. But I also do phonological awareness. I do all the basic skills as well. There aren't a lot of people doing writing work with teachers right now, so that's kind of a specialty that people have latched onto because there aren't 5 million of us. And there are some very talented phonological awareness folks at this conference. Mary Dahlgren's my good friend, et cetera. But there are a decent number of people out there doing that, so it's a little easier to track down somebody. So I've been pulled into a lot of writing work. What we're going to do today is this. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some framing kind of framing overarching writing concepts that aren't necessarily particular to argument writing, to working with writing in general with kids. So I'm going to start there with 4, and one of them should be familiar if you attended the keynote yesterday. We're going to talk a little bit about gradual release, which I know Anita talked to you guys about yesterday. So, but 3 others. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the language of argument writing and what that genre means and how that's framed. And then we're going to back up and we're going to do some paragraph generation together. I'm not going to make you write a paragraph, so you may not leave with that notion, okay? So just relax, it's going to be fine. But we're going to do some paragraph generation together. I'm going to guide you through that process of some very kind of foundational, basic paragraph kinds of skills with kids. And then we're going to talk a little bit about argument writing and those kinds of things, okay? So I think it'll be a good morning. I like doing this workshop. I think of the middle high school writing tasks, I think that argument plays the biggest role as they transition into college. There's a decent amount of, I'm reading something and I'm writing an argument or a position paper based on it. I think there's some informational text writing at that grade level too, but there's a lot of that argument writing. So I really feel like this genre packs a wallop in terms of what kids need. And I'm not dissing narrative writing, but I'm going to tell you that in college, you can get a PhD in English literature and never have written a narrative. You can do it. So I just think that may be less of a focus as we get older. So when we were talking about this workshop, actually, your coordinators and they said, can you do genre writing? And I was like, sure, I'll do whatever you ask of me. I haven't been up here before to this conference. I'm the new kid on the block. I want to be friendly. And then I got to thinking about genre, all three genres in 90 minutes and what that might look like. And I thought to myself, yes, I can do it, but nobody in the room would be happy while I was doing it, so that perhaps we should focus. And they were super great about it. I emailed, I said, why don't we just do argument? Do you think that would be good? So I think we'll have a sort of a good focus just specifically on that. The group is small. These rooms are relatively small, which is great. If you have a question, ask. If you send me way down a rabbit hole, I will say, can't wait to talk to you at lunch. Okay? And that's a hint that the other people next to you are not as happy with your question as you are. Everybody okay? But don't be shy about questions. If I say something that's unclear and you want clarity, please ask, because I want you to get this and really understand what we're doing. My goal is that you will have some things you could take out and either share with the teachers you're working with as a coach or administrator, or share with the kids directly. Let me do a little bit of polling, and then we're gonna get into content. How many of you are working with kids on a daily basis? Okay, well then let me be more specific. How many of you are working with sort of like 5th through 8th grade kids on a daily basis? 9th through 12th grade kids on a daily basis? How many of you are ELL teachers? SPED teachers? None. Administrators? Academic coaches, literacy coaches, some coaches, some non-football coaches. Okay, who am I leaving out? Hi. Title, great. 4th grade, great. You're gonna have a good experience. They were. I do this with younger groups as well. They were looking for some older kid topics to balance out. They've got a lot of the sort of basic foundational things, so that'll be great. All right, so let me talk to you about these 4 foundational writing concepts that I use when I'm working with kids. I know you've heard of process, not product, but I want to frame this a little differently for you, because I think probably when you were in school, teachers would say, oh, it's about the process. And for kids, it's not. It's about finishing it up and turning it in. And we all know that. So it's lovely that you've got this concept that's kind of a bumper sticker, but let's be real, when do I get to turn this in and be done with it, right? And when you're on the 7th draft of a paragraph, even the teacher's like, when will this end, right? So, okay. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this, though, because the research on this process piece is pretty good. And one of the things it says to us is that when we're in a place with writing where we're developing ideas, it is good to get the kids to kind of witness that process, to experience that process from one another, what have you. In other words, if you're writing, it's not a bad idea for you to explain what your brain is doing while you're writing. Everybody with me? So, and there are some self-reflection kinds of sheets you can use. You can also say, hey, you've been writing for 10 minutes. Turn and tell your neighbor how that's been going. And just kind of an experiential kind of processing thing. And one of the things that does with kids is it helps them sort of frame and think about what's happening. So a kid might say, I've had writer's block the whole 10 minutes. This has been the worst 10 minutes of my entire life. That's okay. But his neighbor might say, hey, wait a minute. You know what? That's funny, because I did for a minute, and then I started thinking about last night's soccer game, and that helped me think about the topic of competition or something, right? So they're showing through interaction this piece. Okay, the other thing about the process piece is that we are targeting and picking specific goals to work on on with individual kids. So there's your differentiation. It also may be your MTSS model, but what are the targets I've got for this kid? Because if you take a struggling writer and you go after everything, he won't write for you again. And you probably already know that, right? So if you have the 9-page rubric and he only got a 5 on 3 things, he is what we call no longer available for learning. Okay, he's available for other things, okay? For example, perhaps some colorful vocabulary, but probably not learning. So we want to think about that as we work on that. Okay, so the second thing is this, writing in front of students. So the research is very good about teachers coming in and model writing in front of students. And I don't mean bringing in a mentor text. That's a different thing. I'm not saying that's bad or good. We're not talking about that. I'm talking about you're coming in, taking a topic, and generating text, either up on your board, or I use the computer when I do this, and showing them what this looks like. And while you're doing this, you actually never shut up. You talk through everything you're thinking and doing, so the kids can watch and hear what happens to you. Does that make sense so far? Now, for some of you who are pretty comfortable writers, you're thinking to yourselves, oh, okay, I'll try that tomorrow. And for some of you who are like, yeah, no, I am not writing in front of kids, what have you. So I've got a couple of secrets for you. The number one secret is, you ready? You write better than your kids, okay? So it's going to be okay. All right, that's number one. Number two, what the research actually says is that if you get up and write a perfect product, it's not very good. That's not what you want to do. You want to struggle and grapple with things as you write, because then the kids get to see that you are not this perfect writer, what have you, and that when you struggle, you work around it and you figure out a solution. So things like writing a couple of sentences and saying, oh, you know what? This isn't going in the right direction. I'm going to delete these 2 sentences. I'm going to try a different way to do it. Okay? Or stopping and saying, I cannot think of what else to write about. In fact, I'm thinking about the fact that I've got to get milk on the way home from the store. I'm a little bit distracted, blah, blah, blah. Like talking through this process and then saying, oh, but wait a minute. I've got an audience. My kids are watching me. And saying this all out loud to your kids, okay? And saying, you know what? My next thing is going to be, and really showing them when I get in a rut, and I get in a rut too as a teacher, okay? This is what I do. Teaching them techniques and strategies through modeling that will allow them to work around. What's super intimidating for kids is for you to get up and write the pre-planned flawless essay, okay? Because that's untouchable. And they'll be sure to commend you. Wow, that was really impressive. The moment they say that, you've lost them. Wow, that was really impressive means you have just done something unachievable for me. Okay, everybody with me so far? So that piece. One of the things also though, so I'm very into developing concepts in isolation. We do a lot with, here's a prompt, let's strategize, let's brainstorm, let's write the thing. But there are a lot of isolated skills involved with that prompt that would allow us to work out inconsistencies and issues in kids' writing. So I'm just going to pick one very simple one. One thing that a lot of teachers do is work on an introductory hook. Is that fair? You're familiar with the term hook at least. Maybe your kids write the worst hooks in your entire teaching experience. You probably don't need to write 50 essays, but developing 50 hooks would be probably pretty useful to help them learn variety, to help them kind of get that automatic and comfortable. So when they have a prompt, and remember for our assessments, they're timed, right? So they're under pressure. They don't need to spend 35 minutes trying to think of a good hook. They need to have kind of a set of skills that would allow them to do that. So working skills in isolation. I'm working with those 2 seniors I mentioned to you that I'm working with right now in tutoring. When we do tutor on a kind of a regular basis, I'm working on how they incorporate quotes as defense of an argument, because kids tend to be notoriously awful at making quotes flow in their paragraphs. It's a pretty difficult skill anyway, but I would argue, I don't have research on this, but I would argue that the reason they're bad at this is they only practice it when they're doing longer essays. So they don't have enough opportunities to really develop that skill. So what I've been doing with these seniors, and they can write 10-page papers, they've done it, but what I've been doing with these seniors is having them write just 1 paragraph responses, and in the paragraph is a well-incorporated quote. So it's just these little teeny, does it make sense? So we're really focusing on the skill. So you think about, if we had longer today, I'd have you kind of turn and talk and think about some things that you wish your kids were good at or better at than they are right now. Those things might turn into isolated projects that you do over time. All right, so I know some of you are familiar with the concept of a mini lesson. One thing I want you to watch about mini lessons is this. The struggling kids need multiple repetitions and opportunities for practice. So if you have kids, for example, writing paragraphs with short, choppy sentences, okay, and you do a little sentence combining thing as a mini lesson, which is perfectly fine, I got no problem with that, but that's the only time you see it, that's going to help the strong writers, but it's not enough repetitions or work to work with the weaker writers. Everybody got me so far? So part of that differentiation actually is pacing and number of repetitions. It may be the exact same skill, it may even be similar instruction, but it may be paced out longer with more opportunities to practice. Questions so far? Okay, so the final thing is this gradual release. So Anita and I are good friends. I had dinner with her the night before last. In fact, I think she mentioned me without mentioning my name during your keynote. I was not there. I was getting ready. But so you know about I do, we do, you do, and I'm guessing she made you say it out loud. Is this correct? Good. I'm glad she made you say it out loud, and I'll bet you all of you did, because she will call you out if you do not say it out loud. Okay. So I told her yesterday as she walked by, I said, you know, I talk about gradual release, Anita, and although you didn't invent it, I give you a lot of credit, because she's really gotten this mainstreamed out into the world. It's a pretty old concept. And I say, but I add something to it. And I don't know that she approved. She said, well, that's interesting, and she walked on. But what I do is I do, we do, you do, or it's do. Okay, so so think about that. But the other thing I want you to think about is this, and Anita may have mentioned this yesterday morning. She sometimes does. I do, we do, you do. I often do, you do with a partner first, and then you do solo. Okay, so and I'm very into, those of you who were with me yesterday saw this, a lot of pair work, not necessarily group work. I think group work doesn't give kids enough opportunities to practice, but pair work where you've got a partner and you can work with it. But okay so far? Cool. So I'm going to give you a little research on argument writing, and then we're going to move into the practice, and we'll be able to do some things. All right. Allinghouse, Graham, and Gillespie and Press found that for informative, narrative, and persuasive text. So guys, that's our three genres, right? They're calling them slightly different, but these are the three genres in the standards. Between 30% and 43% of the variance in holistic scores was explained by topic knowledge. That was 6 to 30%. And discourse knowledge, 13 to 23% in 5th grade students. Now, that's a little younger than some of you are working with, but guys, they didn't do a high school study and find out it wasn't true, okay? So I would argue that this is an ongoing thing. Let me explain what this means, okay? So 30 to 43% of the variance was explained by topic knowledge. In other words, you write better if you know something about what you're writing about. This is not a surprise. Turns out that if you're writing a lit crit essay on To Kill a Mockingbird and you haven't read the book, your paper is on shaky ground, okay? Turns out that Sparks Notes does not help you quite as much to write that substantive paper. It may help you with the overarching multiple choice test, but it's not going to help you with that substantive paper. Okay, so content knowledge is important, but also discourse knowledge. So what that is knowledge of genre, okay? In other words, do you know what an argument looks like? Do you know the components of an argument? Do you recognize features of an argument when you read one? Everybody see what I'm talking about, okay? So like, do you, for example, a claim or a thesis is one of the things we talk about. Do you recognize that? Do you know that they are typically at the end of the first paragraph, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So are those things that you're familiar with? Because what that does is two things. That gives you reading comp. Okay, you understand what you're reading better because you recognize the typical structure of this piece. But it also gives you a better ability to write, because when you go to write, you know what an argument is supposed to look like, and that guides your argument writing. Everybody okay so far? All right. The catch is when they do research like this with writing, writing is, in my mind, the hardest thing to assess, because there's so many things that contribute to writing. Some things we're not even talking about today, like handwriting and spelling, they actually impact kids at your grade level all the time, even if you're not marking off for handwriting and spelling. So there's so many features, it's very hard to untangle the features and figure out which thing contributed to what. Okay. An awareness of genre helps writers make assumptions and predictions about who will be reading the text, what their interest and knowledge are likely to be, and how they may be using the information. So I'm working with 3 schools in Montana on a grant very similar to the one you're working on here. And I just met with the 3 AP teachers. There are 3 AP teachers offering classes at this one high school. And AP may seem higher level than we're talking about, but that is a very specific audience. It's a timed assessment, and there are very specific requirements of what's to be done. So there's a biology teacher, they do AP Bio. There's a Euro teacher, they do AP European History, and there's an English teacher. And first of all, those tests are very different. But one of the things I recommended to them was that they go in and write in front of the kids, which they're all willing to do. But another thing I recommended to them is that when they're sitting here and they're framing their discussion, they need to help the kids visualize an audience. So I'm going to tell you, this is what I do with my kids when I'm working on this. So I've got these 2 high school seniors I mentioned to you. When we were doing SAT, ACT prep in 10th grade, I said, look, when you're writing these essays, I want you to visualize an old, kind of stodgy teacher, okay? Because I don't want them writing about inappropriate, risque topics, okay? That's number one, that gets that off. The old, somewhat stodgy teacher is fair but strict, okay? And she's sitting with a glass of wine on a cocktail table, like she got it on her little, coffee table. She's got her feet up on the coffee table reading these, and she has a stack that is above her head of these essays she has to read. Okay? So, I've met some people who do these essays. They do not all look or act that way, but it doesn't really matter. I want the kids writing for an audience, and part of that is, who are you writing for? So when you guys have your kids writing, one of the audience people is you. Okay, and that's a perfectly fine person. And, I've walked into classrooms and said, hey guys, what are my 3 big pet peeves? Okay, that's writing for an audience. I know as a student of Mr. Van Cleave that if I use the word very, he is going to go ape in the margin. That is one of my big pet peeves, okay? So I tutor on Google Docs now with Skype because I'm on the road so much. And one of my students, he was writing in front of me, like on Google Docs, and he typed the word very, and he goes, I didn't mean that, don't say anything. Okay, and he deleted it. So knowing your audience, knowing what to expect, okay? But part of that is the teacher, the individual. Part of that is what genre I just went into. So if you go take AP Bio, if you take an assessment that has a science section, what have you, there's a whole different genre, whole different kind of response, and they were in a pretty interesting discussion, these teachers, because the science teacher said they want it clipped, clean, answer the question, get out. The English teacher said, oh my gosh, when they analyze these poems, that is the absolute opposite of what they want, right? So that's not about either one of them is better or worse. That's about knowing your audience and what's expected. Everybody okay so far? So one of the things, I didn't have rubrics when I was in school back in the dark ages. They barely had paper. So like one of the things that rubrics do is they help kids set up audience expectations, right? Okay, they frame that for you. All right. Research indicates that when students write in a content area, they are pushed to write for a specific purpose with language, vocabulary, and genre specific to that content. So I'm going to show you an argument one in a minute, but there are a set of terms you can work on within a certain genre. So I'm going to give you a quick example. You see things like setting and characters in a narrative, but you don't see those kinds of things in informative or argument text. You with me? You guys all know that. Your kids probably know it, but may not be kind of conscious and thinking of it. And it makes sense to have them be that way, to have them sort of think about it and be aware of what they're expecting. Okay. Bruning and Kaufman found that topic-related interest and knowledge significantly influence writing quality and engagement. So I am guessing you already know this from your own experiences, but they've actually got data that says if you are motivated by your topic, your performance is better. What they also found, though, is that knowledge is a stronger indicator than your passion or your interest. It is more important that you know something, okay? So what we're going to want to do with these kids is make sure they're reading text, make sure they're marking things up, make sure they're taking some notes and getting some ideas, that they're pretty comfortable with the topic when they start writing, okay? Because otherwise they're going to be floundering. A stronger writer could be flipping through the notes as he's going and would probably be able to wing it on the last minute night before the paper's due. But a weaker writer who's also struggling with reading, don't forget, most likely, okay, he's going to grapple with that more. Questions or problems? Okay. So let's do a little bit of idea generation. So I am, whether a kid is 6 or 26 doing grad school, I am all about a list. I do not let kids write before they've generated a list of some kind. Now, you guys may be thinking graphic organizers. We'll talk about that in a minute. I am not anti-graphic organizers, but sometimes just a basic list is enough. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to walk you through this. Okay. So I'm going to pick a topic that is unique to this audience. I came up with it about 15 minutes ago when we were starting. Okay. So I'm going to ask you to give me a list, and you can shout them out unless it becomes totally insane. Give me a list of things that are cool about living in Ohio. I know it's March and winter just ended, but be good. There are some good things about living here. Peter Point? I didn't hear you. Oh, Cedar Point. You know, that was an example, by the way, where you take somebody who's a foreigner and you mock them. That's what you all just did, okay? So I just wanted you to be aware of. So I think there are some sensitivity trainings, perhaps at another conference, that you might want to attend. Okay. All right. I would say furniture, too. One of the professors at Worcester, where I went to college, he was retired when I got there, but I met him a couple times, and his daughter went to high school with me in Louisville. He was one of the big writers about the Amish. He wrote, 15 books about it. What else? Yeah, Louisville had a one-day fall this past fall. I was super annoyed, and I was out of town for it. My mom was like, "It's beautiful. I'm sitting out in the yard. It's great." I'm like, "Great, Mom. Thanks." All right, so what else? Say again? Well, so my first grant project was a while ago, and it was in Oklahoma City, and that's actually not a smart place to live. So they go from balmy and beautiful to tornado in, 35 minutes. That's really scary. Okay, what else? Say that again. Hocking, H-O-C-K-I-N-G. Okay. I think that's a good list. I'm happy with that. Okay. So this is a list. A couple things the list does for us. One is it makes sure you know enough about the topic to write about it. Okay? Yes?
I'm so sorry. Can you change the spelling of Erie? It's very funny how you have it.
Sure. What would you like me to do? I'm not sure how to spell it.
Yeah, that E in the middle shouldn't be there.
Great.
But it did seem funny with Erie.
Okay. So I don't remember what I was saying. Thank you. Okay, so one thing we want to do is we want to make sure they know their topic. So if you list a big long list of things, you have proved that, at least as a group, you know something about the state, correct? Okay, so if you start, and I had a kid not too long ago who's like, "I want to ride on different kinds of motorcycles." It's like, okay, I've never written about that. And trust me, I know nothing about this, okay? So I know something about Harley Davidson and loud noises, and that's really the extent. Okay, so I was like, this is fine. I'll learn something. I like to learn something when kids write. He didn't know anything. Okay, so we're in 3 minutes and the list is super short. And I'm like, okay, we got two choices here. We can change topics, or we can do some reading and learn about it, and that'd be fine with me. He chose to change topics because he was being lazy. Okay, but I want to know that up front. And if this is a topic like something like, from a novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, something like that, that's great. If you are having trouble generating a list, what you're going to need to do is go back into the text, even if you read the book, right, and find some stuff. And that's okay, no problem. But I want to know that up front. What I don't want to do is the night before the paper's due, do, or on an in-class writing assignment that you gave me the assignment to prep me a week ago, okay? I don't want to be in a situation where I come in and I don't know enough to feel comfortable with the writing piece, right? So that's the first thing. And remember all the research I just gave you about content knowledge. Content knowledge is the best impact, or the best indicator, I'm sorry, of success with your writing. Okay, so you got a pretty good list here. I never let kids start without a list. So your list, like I said, could be a graphic organizer. That's an acceptable list, but some form of brainstorming and thinking. The only exception would be like a free write, and that is not likely to be an argument piece. The research on free writes, on short free writes, is actually pretty good. I have no problem with free writes. 5 to 7 minutes. A lot of teachers use them as bell ringers. I think that's a perfectly good thing to do. That's all great. That's not this, though, and you would not generate a list for that because it doesn't have a specific audience, specific purpose, etc. It's not quite the same thing. Okay? Cool. On the standardized tests, they all recommend some time for planning. All of them. The question is, are your kids taking that opportunity? So when I look at the kids I'm working with, and again, I'm working with some SAT, ACT prep kinds of things, they've got 27 and a half minutes to write or whatever, and what they're thinking is, I've got around half an hour. I'm supposed to write 4 or 5 paragraphs. I do not have time to plan. But what the research says is the generation of information prior makes the writing easier. It flows easier because the kid's kind of warmed up and primed to go, and also that it's better organized. So it not only flows easier, it's of a better quality. And your kids, I mean, these adolescents, they're old enough to at least understand your argument. Doesn't mean they're going to do it, but they at least will understand your argument. So you really want to make that sell to the kids and talk to them about that planning piece. That's another thing I would model. Come in with a topic and say, guys, I opened up to a topic 10 minutes before you guys walked in, so I would be hitting it kind of like you were. I want to kind of be you for a little while, and I'm going to make a little list. Show them what that looks like, okay? Even if you're not somebody who does that in your own writing, that's not the point, right? You're supposed to be showing them what they need to do to be stronger writers. Okay, you've got a good list. So my next thing is categorization, etc. So in a longer essay, one that's beyond one paragraph, I would want to group some things. So help me. Do you see some things we might put together? Okay, would that be perhaps the Browns and the Cleveland Indians? Is that what you were thinking? Okay. What else? Ooh, okay, good. So here, I see what y'all are doing now. Okay, so watch. We got sports. Okay, so you just said vacation destinations. You sound like a promotional bulletin for the estate now. Okay. What are some things, sir, that you, and anybody, that you might put under vacation destinations? Okay, so you're looking at festivals, Cedar Point. Within the vacation destinations, you might go seasonal. Is that what you're thinking? Okay, so we're going to think about that, and that might be a great way to go. Okay, so what are some other things that would go under vacation? Is this Hocking Hills? Is that a vacation destination? I've never heard of Hocking Hills. I'm going to be honest with you. Safety from natural disasters. Okay, so the neat thing is you can go on a cool vacation and not die. Is that what you're saying? Okay, no, I'm okay with that. That's great. So I don't know where it happened. There it is. Okay. Because I was actually thinking to myself, I'm not sure that one's going to fit in our topic. And one thing you want to teach the kids, and you've made it fit. I think that we could actually kind of have a funny spin with that. That might be the concluding sentence, actually, right? You go through all these fabulous, and by the way, since you're in Ohio, you won't die. Okay, that would be cool. All right. So, and that, you think about the stodgy reader, right, who's sitting on that would perk her up. She'd be like, oh, well, I need to get a second glass of wine, right? Okay, so, all right. So you got these vacation destinations. I'm feeling good about that. Do be aware, and you need to teach the kids this, when you brainstorm, because it's very kind of loose and free, not everything's necessarily going to fit. And that's totally okay. when they give you like pre-planned notes on something, you have to include everything. But that's not the way this works. And brainstorming, if you're going to have it freelance, I want them to feel super comfortable sharing whatever they're going to share. They might repeat, so what? The most annoying child in your class is the one who goes, we already said that. That kid needs to be quiet, because what I don't want to do is make you feel uncomfortable sharing again on the off chance that it's already been said, right? So as we're generating, we're grouping, we're clustering. Can you start to see some paragraphs here? Everybody with me? Now, there might be too many things in this and not enough here. We have to think about some of the parallels. We're not going to write this essay in particular anyway, but as we're thinking about this, we want to think about parallelism, right? You want a certain number of things under each item. Okay, so my first two steps, I've got a topic, I make a list, okay, and then I start to categorize or group. And I would argue to you that this is for anything you're going to write, informational text as well as argument opinion writing, okay? When you're doing informational text, this stuff you're categorizing and grouping is facts you've taken from your sources, okay? Might be a little mini research project, something like that. But the framework is the same. Practicing what we just did without ever writing is fruitful. Have them generate a list, categorize, and say, good, that's that assignment. We're finished. Let's try another one. Or, you know what? I'm going to get you to try one for homework now. We've done one together. Let's see what this looks like for you guys to do. Questions or problems so far? Okay. So give me 3 things on this list, never mind the categories, that you think are just vital to the Ohio excitement.
I think the Amish, there's concrete things there, but Amish country, which somebody has said earlier, could go under vacation destination.
Okay, so this is what I'm going to do since she just did that. I'm going to say we're going to write on vacations in Ohio, or vacation destinations in Ohio, which I would argue people outside of Ohio might not think of as a vacation destination. Is that fair? Not dissing you at all. Kentucky isn't either. And we've got some fantastic state parks in Kentucky, some of the best in the country. All right, so vacation destination. So our topic sentence, whatever it's going to be, is going to have, and I'm giving them these prompt words. It's going to have vacation destination. It's going to have Ohio. And it might have something about kind of surprise, or, you'd be, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm kind of there. Okay. Everybody okay so far? That's going to be my topic sentence. Now, when we begin this process, we're going to give them a very structured, scaffolded setup. We're talking about struggling writers. They need it. Yes, Harvard and Princeton put out a study that the 5-paragraph essay stilts writers. Yeah. It crunches writers who are headed to Harvard and Princeton, who are super strong writers who are already writing well beyond that box. But to frame that first for our kids, to set that up and get them comfortable, they will write beyond the scaffold when they are ready. Okay? But these kids, they either write horribly unorganized essays that are all over the place, or they write 2 sentences and don't know what else to say. Okay, you got one or the other. All right, yeah. Yep.
But would you say it's okay or appropriate to give them their transition words and phrases in their sentence starters too?
Because so that's a really good question. I'm actually going to talk a little bit about vocabulary, so give me like 5 minutes. And no, that's great. You didn't know where I was going. I haven't clarified that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the vocab at the next level, so let me do that then. Okay? That's terrific. Good question. Sure. So these are supporting sentence 1, supporting sentence 2, and supporting sentence 3. And guys, these are definitely in the handout, okay? So you don't have to scribble madly. They're there. Concluding sentence.
My other question then is, will we include our thesis statement?
Okay, so this is a single paragraph response. It's not a multi-paragraph essay. You with me? So I'm telling you that for what we're doing right now, the whole thing is 5 or 6 sentences. That's it. So you can't have a big long intro because you'll be done with your requirement. Okay, you with me? Topic sentence. Now the topic sentence might have some sort of argument. So you might say something like, the Civil War was justified for several reasons. That's actually a claim. It may not be brilliantly worded, but it's a claim. And we're going to frame it. We're going to have several reasons. And then we're going to conclude and say, thankfully, the Civil War, freed the slaves in addition to other things. Bam. And we're going to be set. So that would be a 5-sentence with a claim. Okay? Totally fine. Questions, problems? That's a great question. We're going to get to the point where we have the claim thing. We're headed there. Everybody okay? All right. So I would like to be able to walk into any classroom where, and a lot of you have kids in this group, 2/3 of you are working with kids. I would like to walk into your classroom and say, hey, what goes into a paragraph? Ask your kids that next time. I think you'll be surprised at what some of them say. Okay? I've had pretty high-level middle schoolers say, well, capitals and punctuation, because they're used to you saying, hey, you didn't put periods, come on, okay? Or if you're really lucky, after all of that, they'll say, and they say complete sentences. Okay, that's super exciting. Not necessarily specific to a paragraph. I'd like that out of most of your writing, right? Okay. Then they hopefully will get into something like they're all on the same topic, right? All the sentences. And that's starting to get into more of something, But I'd like kids to be able to tell you there's a topic sentence, an introductory sentence, a hook, something, whatever your language is. There's some supporting sentences, and there's a way to kind of wrap up and conclude. I don't think all your kids could tell you that. And I don't know which kids you're working with, obviously. I just met you guys. But I think that would be an interesting question. I think you'll learn a lot about what you might need to do and talk about with kids. Okay, yeah?
So in 6th grade, we have to respond to 2 to 3 articles.
Yep.
So you're saying before even giving them
Yep.
any kind of articles, this is where
Yep.
they start out.
This is a precursor to that. That's a great question. And yes, the middle school writing stuff, you're having a couple of different articles, you're having a couple of different perspectives, you're responding to those things, that's all good, and you're headed there. But foundationally, if they can't do this, they can't do that. You with me? Okay. Now, some of your kids, this would be the first 2 days of class in late August, and you wouldn't come back to it again, okay? Some of your kids, though, hey, guess what? It's March, and we're still having fun with this. That's okay. All right? Okay. So, I will tell you this, as a school, you need to systematize your vocabulary. So she just asked me what these terms mean. These are my terms, they come from my mentor. You've seen them before. You don't have to use my terms, but your school has to use the same terms as a school, okay? So I just discovered, I'm working with a school now in an ongoing consulting relationship. We just discovered that the 3rd grade teacher's calling these sentences supporting sentences, the 4th grade teacher's calling them detail sentences. Neither one of those is horrible. To do both of them is silly, and it confuses kids who really need a good vocabulary to talk about it, okay? So we're going to systematize our vocabulary. And that takes some interesting staff meetings, okay? Because, the notion of compromise is challenging, and you need to have somebody, and it may not be the principal or the chair of the department or whatever, somebody who can manage a meeting running, because you've got some very gifted principals who don't necessarily run a meeting well. That's not their forte. They have other fortes. You want somebody who can handle and manage a meeting and to keep people focused on the kids. Because if you're using detail and you're using support and you're both feisty about it, you're focused on what you do, not what the kids do, right? And that's what I've got to help them shift away from. Everybody okay? Okay. And I would argue, I'll say this one disclaimer, I would argue one of the reasons this comes up as an issue is because teachers meet a lot as a team, like the 3rd grade or the 8th grade. They don't get as much time across the grades. So they don't have that sort of facilitated relationship across the grades. And principals, I've never met a principal who's unwilling. It's harder to schedule, right? That kind of cross-grade beat. Okay, so everybody okay with this piece? All right, can you see how we could pick 3 of these pieces and have them turn into supporting sentences? Is that okay, everybody? All right, we're going to do a slightly simpler topic so we can move past this. I want everybody to jot down the name of one movie you like. One movie you like. Does not have to be currently in theaters. You've seen a movie in your life, so don't be all like that. Of the many movies I have seen, 3 stand out as truly awesome. Let me hear some movies. What'd you come up with? Divergent's fine. Forrest Gump. Cinema, you just wanted to see if I could say that. Cinema Paradiso? Yeah. Okay, good. Meet the Parents. These are quite different movies. That's kind of amusing. Okay, so good. A Star is Born. The new one was great. It really was. Good. Field of Dreams, great. I Can Only Imagine. While you were sleeping. The Wizard of Oz, there's one in every large group, okay? Wizard of Oz, there's also a Sound of Music in every group. Is there a Sound of Music in here? Yep, there we go. Okay, good. And I'm going to tell you all another thing, because teachers are usually women. There's usually at least one notebook in the room. Is there a notebook? See, there she is. See, I told you. I should do statistical research on that. Those 3 movies are always in there. Okay, what have you got? Sure, good. Great movie. Yeah, great. Beaches, that's a great movie. Super sad, cry every time. How old are the children you're going to see the movies with? Okay, so good. What do you got? Sure, good. Stars Born, great. Elf, great movie, and super funny next to Pride and Prejudice. Can you see Pride and Prejudice with elf characters? All right, so you get the idea. I'm not going to go all the way around the room because we'll lose our time. But, okay, so I'm going to sort of frame you here, okay? Of the many movies I've seen, 3 stand out as truly awesome. Now, when I start writing, okay, now I make this as a Kentucky reference, me personally. I say I put my blinders on. That's a horse reference. Everybody got it? Okay, so if I said, don't take this the wrong way, if I said, I've never particularly liked the movie Forrest Gump, does that fit? No, because I'm talking about awesome movies, right? So if my blinders are on, that's over here somewhere. It doesn't fit my blinders. So one thing I would do with kids is do some trial and error. You can do yes, no paddles if they'll handle it. Older kids tend to think that's annoying. But say some sentences and say, would they fit or not? Give them some sheets where they have 4 or 5 possible sentences and they cross out the 2 that are just no. They would not work for my paper. Everybody okay with that? That's 2 things are happening. One is obviously they're learning what a support looks like, but they are training their brains to think about what they would want to generate when they go to write. Okay? All right, so forgive me for this. I'm going to kind of quickly do this. Supporting sentence 1. As a child of the 70s, I am a huge Star Wars fan. I'm just going to give you just the movie titles so you'll remember what I'm talking about. Supporting sentence 2. My favorite all-time movie is Shawshank Redemption. Supporting sentence 3. In the last couple of years, probably the movie I liked the most was a little film called Baby Driver. Concluding, this is the snarky one I use, but concluding sentence. If you want to be my friend, you have to see these movies. But you could also say, you know, if I were stranded on a deserted island, these would be 3 movies I'd love to see. Or, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to go. And I would argue, guys, that when you're working on this kind of thing with kids, you want to come up with more than one. Because you want to show them that you haven't given them the definitive answer, okay? So you might do something like that and say, hey, guys, what's another way we could do a concluding sentence, right? And show them that there are options, okay, that we've got options. Now, your most struggling kids, like you were talking about kids who need transition words, they're going to copy down yours, okay? That's okay at that level. If they're not ready to release yet, that's okay, all right? If it's a good one, make sure you've given them a good one. Okay, everybody good so far? Okay. So this is what our vocabulary calls a basic paragraph. Topic, 3 supporting, concluding. Everybody okay? Cool. Now watch. I can now go in and do details. I'm not going to do this for all 3. You get the idea? I'm going to add 2 details for each. If they really need scaffolding, you might do 1 detail for each first and then go on. And I'm going to show you how this fits literary criticism, in a minute, like a response to text. So watch again. Of the many movies I've seen, 3 stand out as truly awesome. As a child of the 70s, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Detail 1, the special effects are still awesome today. Detail 2, Han Solo was a great place to learn sarcasm. Okay, so those are my details. I couldn't say, gosh, Jar Jar Binks is annoying, okay, because that wouldn't fit. I'm talking about awesome things. If you don't know who Jar Jar Binks is, that's okay. I did meet a woman the other day who asked me if Yoda was the one with the black helmet. No, not. Don't talk out loud anymore. Okay, everybody with me? Okay, good. So, supporting sentence 2, my favorite all-time movie is Shawshank Redemption. Here are my details. They're going to be about Shawshank, not about movies. Everybody see, we're on a 3rd tier here, okay? My topic and my concluding are 1 tier. My supports are 1 tier. My details are a 3rd tier. Not MTSS tiers, okay? I'm talking about tiers of writing, okay? So my details for Shawshank. As usual, Morgan Freeman is pitch perfect. This is the first movie where I could actually tolerate Tim Robbins. Okay, so those are my details. They're backing up my Shawshank thing. You're in the right mode. Oh my gosh, I could go watch this film and actually like Tim Robbins. Everybody good? All right, so supporting sentence 3. My favorite recent movie is a little film called Baby Driver. Detail 1. Though I'm not usually a big fan of soundtracks, each song fits the scene it's in perfectly. Detail 2. The actor who plays the protagonist blends perfectly kind of action hero with love interest in a role that will bring in audiences of all backgrounds and interests. Okay. And then concluding sentence, if you want to be my friend, you have to see these movies. Or if I were stranded on a deserted island, these are 3 movies I would have, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody okay so far? Okay, so listen to me frame this. How many of you read a Percy Jackson novel? Percy Jackson. Great. Okay. It's a good film. So let's say, very simply put, that I say Percy Jackson is a classic example of an epic hero. Okay, now think about it. The first thing I would need to do this topic is what? Help me out. Okay, you need to read the book, and then who said characteristics? Characteristics of what? Okay, good. I got to have both of those, right? It would be nice if you've read the book. Okay, that's useful. Okay, but I also need to know what an epic hero is, right? And I probably need that in a list. That's probably going to be my list, is the characteristics of epic heroes. Okay, so one thing about epic heroes is that they are brave. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put brave here. Then my details are going to be textual evidence and discussion of. You see how we're framing this? Okay. Supporting sentence 2, he comes from noble birth. Details are he's Poseidon's son, blah, blah, blah. You see what I'm doing? Okay. Can I do this with, I'm back on To Kill a Mockingbird, but yes, Atticus Finch is a character of integrity, and we're going to back it up with support from the text. So this framing device, you all were talking about, is this where I start? This framing device we can expand and then tweak a little bit to fit certain things, right? It's not going to fit perfectly everything we do, but I've got the framework that I can use and modify to suit my needs as we're going forth. Make sense, everybody? Okay. So I'm going to get you to do something with a partner. If you're sitting alone, you can do this solo, but you'll have more fun doing it with a partner, so you might want to shift. I'm not going to police this. I'm just suggesting. Okay, so people in this row of tables, you are going to do, I have to get there, wait 1 second. You're going to do B. The middle is going to do C. There it is. And the right-hand side is going to do D. And by the way, you guys got the funny one. All right, so B is, given the health risks, should parents allow their children to play football? C is, you're C, okay? C is, should classes in the arts be required in K through 12 schools? And D, and guys, this is the single best writing topic for 15 and 16-year-olds in the world. I'm telling you right now, okay? D is, should people over the age of 65 be retested to keep their licenses? And the reason I say this is the best topic is because they will throw their grandparents under the bus in under a second. It is so funny. All right, so guys, I lost B. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to freak you out. Here we go. All right, so you guys are B, okay? You guys are C. You guys are D. What I'm going to ask you to do is this. Take a stand, okay? You got to decide. Take a stand. Don't be all like, well, sometimes if, Take a stand. Make a list, okay? You need at least three reasons. And then write one sentence that might be kind of your thesis or your argument sentence. Everybody good? I'm not going anywhere. Wave at me if you need help. I'm happy to help you. All right. If you haven't quite finished your thesis statement, that's okay. I really want your list at least to start with, and we've only got so much time, and so you get the idea. So a couple things we did. Everybody listen? A couple things we did. Okay, first of all, you were doing collaborative, what have you, but we've got a routine going here. We've only done it once, so it's not really a routine for you guys, but you took a stand, you made a list. When I'm thinking about argument writing, I want to take a stand, make a list. Now, at the middle school, high school level, you've got to deal with the other side, right? Okay? So you have the counterclaim, and you have rebuttals, and you have all these different things. That's fine. We'll see how far we get today, okay? But that would be part of your routine as well. My handout has some templates. I'll show them to you. You don't have to use my templates. I'm going to recommend that you use some template. And I would argue that if you're a mainstream teacher, maybe only certain kids need the template in the middle school, high school realm, okay? I don't think that the higher level kids will be harmed by a structure, but I think that the lower level kids are really going to need the structure. Everybody okay so far? Eventually, obviously, when you are taking an assessment, you don't have Miss Smith's graphic organizer on the, okay, so you got to teach the kids to kind of independently create the structure that you're trying to build, okay? All right, cool. Let's hear a little bit of sharing out. I'm going to start anybody over here who's willing to sort of share where you stood, yay or nay. So these are the should football be around, basically, okay? So they're going to decide yay or nay, and just give me a reason or two from your list. Who will share? Great. Y'all were all working hard on it. I saw you. Go ahead. Dangerous sport and parents should not allow. Okay, I'm so glad this is being recorded. They're probably going to think that's how I feel. I'm being neutral on all of these. Everybody hear me? Okay, cool. Go ahead. Injury to the brain? Size of the brain impacted. Injury to joints and bones. This is not sounding like a good path. Okay, good. So, fair enough. So, did we have somebody who said yes? Oh, you all went no. Shoot. Okay, so that's fine. It's more interesting, right, when you've got kids on both sides. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll play devil's advocate and I'll take the other side on a topic, which is fine. If you do that, you have to be kind of prepped for it, okay, to think about it. Now, if you're dealing with kids in a high school, none of them are going to be here, right? They're all going to be on the other side. And that's fine. Then you'd have to be ready to say, hey, wait a minute, let's watch the movie The Concussion. That'll give us a different perspective, okay, or something. Everybody okay so far? Okay, do you all have a couple more reasons you could add to hers? Anything? Yeah. Death. Okay, cool. So just plain death. All right, fair enough. All right, so you guys had the arts in schools. How many of you said, yes, art should be required in schools? How many of you said no? Oh, this is one-sided too. Okay, that's okay. Actually, there are usually even teachers. There are a little group of teachers who talk about, not so much. Okay, so let's hear some yes. Why should arts be allowed in school? And if you've got a thesis statement, I'd love to hear it. Imagination and creativity, good. Other reasons from anybody in the group? Helps with positive development. In what? In other content areas, sure. The application, excellent. One more good reason from somebody? Allows us to address the whole child, excellent. Did anybody have a chance, and I'm not going to go after them, so don't worry about it. Did anybody have a chance to do a thesis or a sentence yet? And if you did, would you share it? A start would be good. I didn't give you a lot of time. Don't worry about it. What are you thinking about, or can you talk us through what you were thinking?
Art should be required K-12 because of the advantages of academic growth, the supporting of the whole child, and the social, and that's where we go.
Okay, no, that's fine. So they're doing the thesis or claim that involves and includes a paper plan, right, with the little steps. So the trick is this. Some of you may think that sounds formulaic, but some of you also have kids who can't create a claim or thesis statement. So formulaic would be a hallelujah moment, right? So I might even give them a sentence frame, okay, where you'd say, here's the thing that you're going to take the stand, then you're going to use the word because, and then you're going to have 1, 2, 3. Don't do that with super strong writers. I'm not saying, stunt them. I'm saying these kids who need some of this scaffolding and infrastructure, that's a great way to go. All right, good. Now, this is the funny topic. Okay, so raise your hand if you went for, yes, they need to be retested. Oh, okay, good. And raise your hand if you went, no, they should not be retested. Okay, I would love it if you guys would share a couple of your no's in a minute, because then we've got two sides, okay? This one actually, usually teachers are kind of diverse in their perspective too. So you guys said yes up here. Would you give us some reasons that you said yes, they should be tested for their, retested for their driver's license?
Do you want our thesis or just our reason?
If you got a thesis, that would be awesome.
Well, we said people over the age of 65 should be retested to keep their license due to many safety concerns.
Okay, so basically people over 65 should be retested due to many safety concerns. So she was able to take my question, rephrase it as a kind of a definitive statement, right? And she's set up for safety reasons. Now, she has definitely put on her blinders or her lens. Her support would need to be based around safety. Everybody with me? That's totally fine. But if she said something on her list that went outside of safety, it would be outside of the parameter of the blinders. Now, you guys are in Ohio, so you're not quite as obsessed with horses as Kentuckians are. I also will talk to kids about the lens. So the lens through which I'm going to look at the sentences that support. Okay, and they should all fit this whole safety reasons thing. You with? Now I put you on the spot. I'm sorry. Okay, so you guys, what are some reasons you came up with?
We talked about like
Eyesight,
reaction time,
reaction time,
hand-eye coordination.
hand-eye coordination.
Just for the record, though, I would like to up that age. I thought 65 was a little dangerous.
So what are you thinking, 90?
I was thinking more like 75, 80.
Okay, so 75, 80. Fair enough. Okay, so raise your hand if you are. No. Okay, so fair enough. Okay, so that's good. So yeah, obviously this might be hitting closer to home than some. I was mentioning actually to Anita not too long ago this topic, and she was like, "Oh." Okay, and I'll leave it at that. All right, good. So you got some reasons. So guys, a couple things that are happening in all three of the groups. You were able to choose a side, and you were able to generate some reasons that you could use to back it up. Okay, so you're 2 steps towards something. That's really good. Okay, so you guys, you saw an opportunity for a no. Would you share a little bit of some of your no thinking?
65's not old.
Okay, so you're kind of where she is, and you're like, the answer to this is no, because I can't change the number, right? So 65 is not old.
We would need research, basically, that shows declining eyesight, declining health, poor hand-eye sight coordination.
Got you.
Those kinds of things. Otherwise, they're unsupported claims.
Unsupported claims. Listen to her use the lingo. Did you all hear that? Okay. So, okay, good. All right, everybody with me on side. Kids love this. And just so you know, you could come in with a bell ringer that's take a stand, make a list. They don't have to write all of these, okay? They could come in and generate. I was in Greenville, South Carolina. You want to get them riled up, do the whole hunting guns thing, okay? And they get hyped. And one of the high school teachers there, really, really interesting guy. I'd never met him, but his assignments were so interesting. He made them draw their side from a hat. So they had to argue against sometimes. And one of my tutoring students, he's out of college now, but he came into our tutoring session furious because he hunts with his dad every weekend, and he had to go pro gun control, and he was so angry. I had to talk him. I had to do a little counseling first, right? So I had to talk him through that to get him calmed down. I said, look, you can make an argument that you don't believe. This is possible. And little kids can't really, okay? But middle high schoolers, they need to be working there because guess what? You've got to do this counterclaim thing, right? You've got to be to verbalize, articulate this other side. So it's not a bad thing to do. And then they do these debates in class. He won his debate. So after we got him through all this mess, he fought for what he didn't believe in and won through his articulation, which was super great. So he came into tutoring like 2 weeks later when it was turned in. He's like, I won, and I didn't think I was going to win. I was like, yeah, because you don't believe in what you were saying, but you were able to argue. Much harder to do in some ways. Okay. So good. Everybody with me so far? So take a stand, make a list is our argument framework. All right. Now, we're not going to do this, but one thing I would do is this. I think sometimes teachers give kids questions to answer that are kind of short and clean cut. And I would give them some long, wordy, prompt-like questions. Okay. That's all these are. They're examples of that. And I would have them go in, highlight the major words, do sort of some of the text comprehension strategies. That's not the focus of this workshop, but if you don't understand the prompt, you score a 0, because if you write off topic, you do not score. Even if you write well, if you're off topic, you do not score. So I have kids all the time. I'll say, hey, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. And I set my little timer so the bell goes off or whatever, right? Say, read the prompt and be ready to tell me what you're supposed to do. Okay? And then I'll take hands. But then eventually I say, hey, turn and tell your neighbor. Okay, because we need to have everybody doing this. Turn and tell your neighbor, what are you going to be writing about? And kind of check yourselves and see what this is. So, and that's not I've given you like 85 bell ringers. You only have 1 bell. But that's not a bad bell ringer either. Have one of these up on the board. Okay, when they walk in and say, hey guys, in 2 minutes, the timer's up. Figure out what this is about. Be ready to tell me. Okay, work on that piece. Now, you can't start there with super struggling kids. You're not going to time them. You're not going to freak them out. They're going to go in and do highlighting and note-taking. They're going to do some real text extraction. But a typical prompt is longer than some of what we ask our kids to do in the middle high school. Give them some kind of fluff sentences that they have to weed out. Give them some text complexity to have to untangle. And again, these are super interesting topics. I mean, this is about should we have monitoring devices basically in schools to keep kids off of certain sites. This is about do video games promote violence. This is about should graffiti be legal, illegal, blah, blah, blah. They're in my handout online, but like there are dozens of these. Pick something that's high interest that'll get them going, okay? But something that's substantive. Shouldn't be, like why do I like a certain football game? That's not, or football team. That's not going to get them in deep enough. Questions? All right, so I definitely want to show you this. This is in here. This is in draft form. I'm working on my next book. And what I've done is kind of cool, I think. And I gave you the argument ones in the handout. So first of all, so this is the Common Core, but it's different. It's not the way the Common Core is set up. What I did was I took each grade, and this is just argument opinion. So my friend over here, you're talking opinion because of your grade level. In 6th grade, as most of you probably know, it shifts to argument, okay? And on the one hand, it's like vocabulary, and you're like rolling your eyes, and it's the same thing. But on the other hand, when they start to talk about argument, they're talking about evidence, right? It amps up the level of background. Not that you never use evidence with younger kids, but that evidence instead of like reasons is required of these older kids. All right, so what I did on this is, I just want you to look at it later, is I've added in what's new to that grade in red. So you can really see not just what are 7th graders supposed to do, but what are the new things that 7th graders are supposed to do that the standards really don't mention in the preceding grade. Everybody with me so far? That's not how the standards are set up. On the standards, you have to kind of read everybody's and try to figure out what's new to you. This is all laid out for you. And then the other thing I did was this. I gave you, so this is the template we just did with movies. Can everybody see it? I got my 5-sentence paragraph, and then I've got my expansion. I just did the one with movies. That's a simple one to do with you guys out loud quickly. All right, so what I did was I took this foundational framework, and now I'm anchoring it in the language of opinion argument. Okay, so your supporting sentences change into reasons at your grade level, okay? And eventually, as you go across, the reasons get backed up with facts and details. All of a sudden, you get a shift to the term evidence, which gets used for the first time in the standards in 6th grade, okay, for writing. Then I've got reason with more substantive evidence, and check it out, 7th grade, we're mentioning the counterclaim for the first time according to the standards, okay? And then the final template is down here. This is a longer multi-paragraph one. This is set up for high school. Not that middle school wouldn't do multi-paragraph, but the way this one works, you have counterclaim with rebuttal after each reason. And that's the hardest way to go. It's easier. When they're first doing this, they have a little paragraph that says, here are all the other people who disagree with me. I'm just getting them out of the way for you, okay? At the more advanced level, each time you state a reason, you say, other people would say, but they're wrong because, I'm being really simplistic, but you get the idea. Yes? They are. Yes.
So,
What grade are you teaching?
AP 12.
Okay. So no, that's fine. I just needed to know, like, if you're 6th grade, it's a different answer. Okay, so a couple things. One is this. The first way to do this, remember, I showed you guys, is this. And this says, here's a little chunk for the counterclaim. We've got a spot in our argument where we're going to talk about the other side, okay? And that is a simpler way to do it, all right? And I think they need to know how to do this competently before we move. You with me? Okay, so if I'm feeling okay about this, the next level, this is sort of like the typical kind of sandwich. I'm just going to look at one paragraph. So my reason paragraph 1, I've got my reasons with evidence. That's typical. You've been doing this for a long time. You probably been doing this since it was opinion, since it was 4th, 5th grade, all right? But the idea behind the counterclaim and rebuttal is I'm not just counterclaiming, which does send the language backwards. And my colleague up here was talking about the vocab. That nevertheless vocabulary is hard on kids. And I would give them a list of terms and those kinds of things to set, on the other hand, nevertheless, okay. So, but then what we do is this. Right after the counterclaim, we rebut. So most of the paragraph is on your side. You're just incorporating and recognizing the other side, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're basically saying small.
Yeah, teeny in comparison to the other things, if you will. Okay, does that make sense? So I've got a graphic organizer that looks at this one. I've got several in the handout for you, but I'll look at this one because we just talked about that one in more depth. So this is my graphic organizer for this structure. So what I've got is topic and claim. Okay, that's fine. I've got my list of reasons. You might need more, whatever. Okay. And then each support, I've got a reason with evidence. And this would not be whole sentences, guys. This is your notes, okay, your planner. And then I've got my counterclaim with rebuttal. Just look at how it's stacked in terms of lines. You with me? Okay, so I've got 3 of those basically. And you could have 4. You can also have 2. All right, there's not a mandatory here. Little kids, you say at least 3. Okay, it is perfectly possible to write a very good paragraph with 2 supporting sentences. But if you tell little kids that, that is what they will do every time. If you tell your kids that, I'm guessing they will do that every time too. Everybody okay so far? Okay, so do you remember when we were talking about the language of different genres? Okay, I want to show you a sheet because I think one of our problems with these kids is since they have reduced reading experience, they have reduced vocabulary. So this is something I've been building for my new book. And this is vocabulary specific to argument writing. So it's a set of terms. It's not 50 terms, okay? It's a set of terms like argument, like claim or thesis, like counterclaim, evidence, source, etc. And there are a couple little sub-things. For example, point of view is important, but I also need to know author's point of view. That's different from your point of view. Okay, and then I've got some terminology like refute. And then what I did is this. These are adjectives used to describe the evidence. And I've done them as synonyms. So believable, convincing, credible, persuasive, plausible are things. So one plausible argument against this might be, are you with me? Now, the kids wouldn't know all these words. They shouldn't know all these words. But they don't want to know just one word, right? They've got to have some vocab. So the AP kids, I would argue, should know these words. And we would work towards getting most of these, okay? My friend here who's talking about some pretty serious strugglers, I would start picking some words, right? And saying, you know what? We're going to spend some time talking about the word decisive, okay? We're going to do, if those of you were with me yesterday, decisive is a super cool morpheme word, by the way. C-I-S-E means to cut, okay, like scissors. So decisive kind of cuts out everything that's flack or junk, all right? So I might really say decisive. I might show them how to use it. We might really work up decisive. Because you don't need 50 million $10 words in these essays, but a few don't hurt you at all, okay? A few $1 million words. So this one down here, just to read one more to you. Strong, a strong point or a strong argument, significant, solid, substantial, substantive. One of the problems with just going to a thesaurus is they give you words that mean the same thing but can't be used in the same way, right? So then you see this awkward placement. This took me forever because I was having to think about whether you could use them in the same places and they would work. Because some of these categories, the one in another category actually means the same thing, but you can't use it in the same way. So I really tried to, so if you went in and you saw a point where you're saying strong point, any of these would work, okay, is the idea. And these adjectives can be used to describe arguments, claims, counterclaims, evidence, and source. You with me? They're framed that way. Questions or problems about this idea? Yeah?
So when we are looking at our writing from last year,
Yes?
scores and things like that,
So she's looking at writing from last year and scores. I'm repeating into the mic. Go ahead.
we are noticing that the word elaboration is coming up tons, and it's saying that our kids are not elaborating enough.
Yes.
So they're really good at proving evidence, but the elaboration is actually more important.
Yes.
So where does that go?
Okay. So here's the deal. Have any of you used race? Okay, so race is a mnemonic for this, okay? And some people use racer, which adds another thing, which is a restate, I think. So this is a mnemonic. I'm not going to stick you with a mnemonic, but I'll tell you this, because I don't like to force a kind of too much vocab on you. Here's the deal. You're going to introduce. This is in the handout, actually. You're going to introduce. You're going to basically smooth flow. You're going to put the quote in, okay, and you're going to incorporate it. Then you're going to explain it. You're going to connect it to the rest of the paragraph, and you're going to connect to overall essay or thesis. So what I would tell you is this. I think one of the reasons that kids aren't good at this, it's too big, you can't fit it, wait a minute. There. One of the reasons, oh, and then you can conclude, sorry. All right, and you know probably that within a supporting paragraph you might have 2 quotes. It's possible, but right now let's just stick with this one, okay. So this is what I think. I'm going to go back to one of my 4 tenets from the beginning of the workshop. I think kids practice this in multi-paragraph essays, and they don't write enough multi-paragraph essays to get this going. Are you with me? And I don't blame you for not assigning multi-paragraph essays every 30 minutes. It's a whole lot of papers to grade. It's a whole lot of deadline stuff. I get it. But if you're not going to do that, and I think you probably shouldn't do that, I'm in agreement with you, then you need to do some single paragraph work that's like this. Does that make sense? So I've got some things where I give them the claim. Okay? And if I can pull one up, what's my time frame? Yeah, I can show you one. I've got some things where I give them the claim, and they just have to write one of the supporting paragraphs. That's it. We never write the rest of the essay. Does that make sense? So they really get practice with not just incorporating the quote, you can see that, but all of this stuff. And we might take a week of looking at different stages of this and revising it and saying, you know what, elaboration. You are not good at elaboration. Let's talk about what elaborating means. No, it turns out a 3-word sentence is not elaborating, right? So what are we going to do to pull that differently? How are we going to expand that or develop that? Okay, so that goes back to one of my things. Isolate the skill deficit. You just identified a specific skill that your kids are getting slammed on, right? So go after that skill. You could also walk in, give them a quote, and say, let's talk about the quote and expand and talk about how that would look. I would do some modeling of that. I would come in and put a quote up. And as a teacher, I would say, well, this is what I'm thinking it means, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you that. This is what I'm thinking how it fits my paragraph, and this is what I'm thinking. So they have 3 specific things to do. They are concrete things. I explain, I connect to the rest of the paragraph, I connect to the overall thesis. There could be some overlap, but this gets, so when they're saying, well, I don't know what to say, have you explained? Have you connected to, have you done these things? The kids, you know what they're worst at? Explaining the quote, because they think it's already been said. Right? And I get that, but you got to get them past that. And they think it's already been said by a professional published author, which it has. So they write better than the kids. Right? So that's a super hard thing for them to get over. Questions or problems? Does that help a little bit, maybe? Is that okay? So another thing I would do, guys, is this. I would put some quotes up and have them reword the quotes. Just that. What is this quote saying? You don't have to analyze it. Just tell me what this quote's saying in a couple of sentences. Okay, so I got a couple more things I want to do with you guys. We just got a couple minutes, so let me get us through a couple things. So I'll send you this vocab sheet as well. When you look at, sorry, I've lost the handout. There it is, okay. So I've got some more basic templates for the lower level kids, okay? And I would argue this to you guys. If you've got a 5-sentence paragraph, you don't want transition words because the periods are the transitions. So the reason little kids sound forced when they go first, next, last in a 5-sentence paragraph, it's because they are forced. That's why they sound forced. You wouldn't transition in a 5-sentence paragraph. When you start doing multi-paragraph, it's a little bit different. Everybody with me so far? Okay, so I'm going to walk you through one last thing that we're going to do together. So I'd like to hear some reasons that smoking isn't a good idea. Cigarettes. That's actually not a bad list right there. Okay. Now watch. I want a counterclaim. Fine. I agree with you. It's harmful to the health. What's the other side? What else? Your health is not my business. I have a relative who's getting on me for having Panera Bread frozen mochas every morning. And that's what I should say. My health is not your business. Okay, good. So, counterclaim calms you down. Your health is not my business, et cetera. Good. Okay, stinks. Counterclaim? Say again? Okay, ways to cover it up. Harmful to others. Counterclaim? Or, kids don't know this, but, back in the day, my mom, when she smoked a lot, she doesn't anymore, but you could smoke in malls, in buildings, in blah, 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 and everywhere. It hasn't been that long, actually. I'm not that old. So, no longer allowed to smoke in or near entrances to buildings. Everybody good so far? Okay, expensive. This one's a little harder. Counterclaim. That's awesome. So can you see the sentence? Okay, so the sentence is basically, I smoke because I believe in the arts. Okay, that's just like, okay, good. All right, guys, have you done this with kids? What we just did, okay? So good. So if you have, if you've gotten, take something that's hard. My student, one of the first things I did with that hunting student I mentioned to you guys is said, okay, you know that I am not necessarily fully on with your perspective. What might I say? Tried to give him kind of a face to the other side, right? And his first response was, well, whatever you say would be stupid. So I was like, okay, Robert, this isn't going to go well. So let's verbalize this a little bit, flesh out. So, can you do this piece? And you can also do it as a 2-column grid. You with me as the frame? So we're starting to think about it. Why not just write a mini response on this? Just pick one. You with me? And that would get us doing the elaboration piece, really fleshing out our position, et cetera, et cetera. Questions? All right, so the thing isn't uploaded yet, is it? Has anyone seen it uploaded? Okay. It will be, or email me. Let me tell you the rest of the things that are in the handout for you, and then I'm going to set you free. So we've got the research I gave you there. I gave you these 2 charts. They are in draft form, but you're welcome to them. I've also given you a foundation in existing opinions and arguments. One of the things the research says is that you need to be talking with them about existing written arguments, okay? Walk them through an argument. Read the argument with the kids. Highlight the specific features of that argument. Get them anchored. And by the way, this is all genres. You want them to write a good narrative? Have them read and think explicitly about the features of a narrative. Oh, in this story, they introduce the characters and they show us a setting. Maybe you should do the same thing, etc. You with me? That's not specific to argument. Use gradual release. I do, we do, you do, as we frame it. It's all talked about. Here we're talking about the language of opinion and argument writing, the specific vocabulary you need to frame your discussion. Here's my take a stand, make a list. Remember when we talked about that, okay? My kids can all tell you, I'll say, okay, we're going to write an argument. What do we need to do? And they'll roll their eyes because they're teenagers, and they'll say, take a stand, make a list. Good. I'm glad you've got it. I don't care if you dislike it, okay? It's really going to help you out. All right. So that's that piece. I've given you the elementary basic, which is perfect for my colleague over here. but I've also given you the middle and upper advanced, a la standards and what they're asking for. This is that basic paragraph we did on a single page. It gives you the walkthrough of everything. A topic, make a list, generate your topic sentence, generate sports. It's all there. And I actually give kids, struggling kids, I'll give them this left thing with the arrows as a cutout, and they can kind of look through their steps when they're framing it. Over on the right is explanation for you. It's probably too much language for a kid struggling to have. I've given you several templates, not just the one that I walked through with you because of your question, okay? Several templates. I've given you my reason thing, questions to analyze. I've given you the template pieces here. And then I've also given you some great transition words. And they're in 3 different categories. This is the last thing we're going to do, and then I'm going to set you free. On the left are these bent arrow words, like even though, although, what have you. These are not organized by part of speech. That would be a syntax workshop. I do those. I'm not doing that here. But this is what I would do with kids. I say, I really like ice cream, even though, change of direction, it is super fattening. Everybody with me? This workshop is going well, although I have 60 seconds left. Okay? So I'm getting them to feel what that, and that's some of that counterclaim language, okay? But even in little kids, this is too many words for a super struggler. You'd go in and find 5 and say, hey, I'm going to work these 5 to death in that order. Okay, these are the continuation words. You go, I like ice cream, and mint chip is my favorite. I'm still going in the same flow. Everybody okay? All right. And then the conclusion one is, this workshop has gone well. Everybody's been pretty engaged. We've had a good experience together. And then I jump over the finish line because I'm wrapping up. In conclusion, it's been a good day. Thank you very much, everybody. I hope you have a great lunch.